Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I found a hidden surprise in one of my garden containers. I found some red wiggler worms in my potato basket. I was so excited since I have been waiting to start a worm farm for composting for a year now. I have searched our yard for worms before and I have found zero. We live in a very sandy spot, and since we rent, I didn't want to go searching in our landlord's side of the property. I was going to buy some worms online, but that was $50 that my family could use elsewhere. The initial plan was to scoop some of this dirt out of this failed potato container so I could use it to start onion seedlings inside. I didn't bring any recording devices outside since I was just going to fill a container with some soil and film me planting some fall crops later. Once I found the worms, I was so excited that I ran inside to grab a separate container to put them in. I forgot my camera again, and the rush to put the worms in the container. I don't know why I was in such a hurry to get the worms. They really have nowhere else to go. I only found 2 at this point and went back inside. I didn't want to leave my daughter unsupervised inside by being outside too long. About 30 minutes later, my husband was awake and I was able to go back outside and dig through the basket some more. I am not sure how the worms got into this container. All the soil that I bought and used in this container came from the store, so I was not expecting to see worms in this container. I keep reading online that there will be a fertilizer shortage this year, and I'm not sure if that is true or not, but I wanted to be more self-reliant anyways, just to be on the safe side, so I was looking for other options for fertilizer. We do have chickens that I could compost their litter, but I'm not allowed to have a compost bin in our yard. My landlord doesn't want too much stuff in our yard, so I'm very limited on what I could do for composting. I then came across vermiculture, which sounded like the perfect option for us. It is better for people with limited space, and it is more manageable for renters. The worms just live in a tote, which takes up very little space, and there is very limited odor. The red wiggler worms can be very expensive online. I think for 100 worms is around $50, which doesn't seem like too much, but I don't like to buy things that nature provides for free, so I kept putting it off. Since this was a surprise, I was not prepared, and I needed to find a new home for the worms that I found. I believe I found over a dozen worms total, which isn't a lot, but they lay eggs every 3 weeks or so. I'm hoping they can increase in size fairly quickly, and I wanted to give them ample space to do so. I had this tote laying around outside that had some chicken scratch and oyster shells in it. It is the only container I had that would make them a decent home. Worms prefer dark areas, and this tote was clear, so it would let in too much light. If I was buying a tote for this task, I would have bought a darker one. Normally you want to drill holes in the bottom of your tote to catch some of the fluid that comes out, but I only had this single tote right now, and I didn't want to mess all over my sunroom. I will get another tote soon and show this step. Since this was a clear tote, I decided the best thing to do was to line the edges with cardboard to prevent too much light coming in. Plus, the worms love to eat cardboard, so it was a win-win until I can get them a better home. Luckily, the sides of this box fit almost perfectly into each side. I did have to trim about 1 inch off each side for the long pieces to fit. I didn't lay any cardboard directly on the bottom. I figured it would be directly on the concrete, and so light wouldn't come through. The side pieces I just left long so I could drape the edges over the top to help cover the top from getting too much light. Only dirt I had left was organic sorghum peat moss. Too much of this isn't really recommended since it could damage the pH of their environment, so I did not want to add a lot into this tote. It is recommended to only use organic peat moss as worms are really sensitive to chemicals. I only added enough to cover up the bottom and keep the sides of the cardboard from falling over too much. I also had an old hay bale that I used in the garden that my husband was going to spread in the yard, but unfortunately it was too moldy, as you can see here. The white stuff you see covering the hay is the mold, and you can see that it's very dusty, which is the mold spores being disturbed. I'm sure the worms could handle this since they live in compost piles, but I didn't want to add too much of it just in case it does cause issues. I just picked off the top layer of the hay, which seemed alright and did not have that much mold on it, or if any mold on it. After adding the hay, I wanted to put some of the soil from the original container into the tote. That way, they would be more familiar with this dirt, and hopefully they wouldn't try to escape out of their new home. So I just put in a few scoops into the container and took some more time to look for some more worms, which I'm glad I did because I was able to find some more. Earlier, when my husband was asleep, I chopped up some squash that I got out of the garden to add to the worm bin, so they could have some fresh food. I should have chopped the squash into smaller pieces or even blended it into a liquid so it would be more easily digested by the worms. It is amazing how little it takes to truly make me happy nowadays. I just dug a hole into the soil of the worm's new home and poured the worms I have collected into the tote, along with the squash cubes. It is recommended to cover the food completely, as this helps to keep other bugs from finding it and laying eggs in it like pesky fruit flies. You don't want the worms to have any competition over food or living space. I should have drilled some ventilation holes on top to prevent too much moisture building up inside, but I will do that once I get a second tote to do this properly. Right now, I am just going to leave the lid cracked. Now you just let the worms chill until they need more food. I will check on them daily to make sure the soil stays damp and that they don't try to escape. They will escape if their environment is not to their standard. After this week, I will just check on them once a week and make sure they still have food. Once we start getting more worms, I can start feeding them more of our table scraps. Here is the worms the next day. Now that the squash is softer, I can cover it better with the soil to prevent fruit flies from finding it. I also misted the soil with water to keep it from drying out too much. That video section was blurry for some odd reason, so I did not put that in. I have a sunroom that we use as a storage room that I will keep the worms in for right now. This area doesn't get too hot in the summer and has a ceiling fan to help with airflow. It is also warmer in here than directly outside in the winter. I am very excited for this new journey of vermiculture. I have been wanting to start it for about a year now and just kept putting it off. So thank you for joining me on this adventure, and please like and subscribe to see how our new worms are doing in the future.